Why are you no longer friends with your best friend? As we grew up, our interests began to differ. It's as simple as that. Edit, just for clarification and in response to a lot of the replies, this was one of those things in my life, and I assume many others as well, that simply happened. There is no fault. There is no start, but there was an end. It just happened. And now looking back on it, it stinks. I'm sure everyone can relate. It's tough to slowly watch and feel a relationship grind into nothing. One year you're playing Halo 2 every day after school, going out to movies, bonfires, friends' houses, talking about which cheerleader you'll date next, going as Dumb and Dumber to a high school prom as your dates look on in horror, and now, you don't even talk. Some crazy family drama. My mother is a real estate agent and sold their house. A few years later the new owner sold the house for $100,000 more after fixing the house up, getting rid of the smoke smell, and the market price increased. When my best friend's mother found out, she tried to sue my mother for devaluing the house when she sold it for them, told the whole town my mother is a witch, etc. etc. Fun times. I had a miscarriage on the morning of the day she'd booked for her baby shower. I called her thinking she'd understand why I didn't want to go. She said, "Oh my God. You'll have to drop your gift off now, before everybody else arrives, so I can put it on the gift table first." Ooh, this messes up my entire day. Seriously, that was the last time I ever spoke to her. The fact that this was the last time you spoke to her, and she never reached out to try to help you, speaks volumes. I eventually learned she was a chronic liar, and it was more harm than good to be friends with her. She would lie about so much, even just little things. She would tell me she's moving, I'd be so sad, and then it would just eventually never happen. She turned people against me so that she was my only friend. She told me a boy I liked signed my yearbook, but she signed it herself pretending to be him. She would tell people she's been horseback riding her whole life and competing, meanwhile I was the one who taught her the basics of how to ride on my own horse. It took me years to figure out how toxic she was. It was hard because she was a fun person to hang out with, but just too much crazy behind the scenes. I wasn't as interesting as weed. I got a bit pissy about the fact I was never invited out anywhere, and I realized that when we were together all they would talk about was smoking weed and other grass-related jokes that got so boring so quickly. I guess I got a bit too much for them, and they decided to make me look like a complete fool, using other people to tear apart my blog at the time, and using everything I ever wrote as a personal attack. Now, my only best friend is my husband. I have a hard time trusting people now though. He had a kid and got a serious adult job. I moved 30 minutes away to be closer to my serious adult job. We still hang out once a month, but it's not like it used to be when we had shit jobs and lived on the same street. I'd still call him my best friend, but we just kinda grew apart. She's bipolar and has good phases and bad phases, I suppose. I don't fully understand it, so I won't pretend to know what it's like. She's in a I just want to be alone phase and deleted me off of Facebook and doesn't text me anymore. I've learned it over the years to just give her the space she needs and to just let her know that I do care and that I'm here if she needs. Got tired of putting 100% into friendships and making all the effort to see and hang out with them. Gave up trying so hard and realized I'm a lot happier without them, and now I know who the important people are in my life. He just left. That's all. One day just stopped talking to me altogether and never visits. We didn't argue, fight, or even have any grievances that I was aware of. I guess he just didn't want me in his life anymore. She had 2 dogs that were always well cared for, walked regularly, etc. Then she moved in with a boyfriend who didn't like dogs. She chained up her dogs in the backyard and basically just ignored them from then on. She didn't even bother to go outside to feed them. She would throw their kibble out the kitchen window onto the ground next to the dog house and only went out a couple of times a week to fill the water dish. I called the SPCA, but since the dogs had shelter, food, and water, there was nothing they could do. I've always been baffled by people who are willing to harm children or animals for the sake of a boy girlfriend. She lied to me constantly, stole from me, made everything about her, and always downplayed things going on in my life. She used to also criticize my relationship relentlessly, but whatever new guy she was dating that week was obviously her soulmate and they were gonna get married, etc. When I got engaged to the same guy I was dating when I knew her, she texted me saying congrats and added I knew you'd get married LOL. Even after cutting her out she still needs to lie, it's insane. can elaborate with crazy stories if they're wanted. We got into high school, she got involved with a different crowd, got involved in drugs, etc. And just stopped talking to me. I never did anything to upset her, and she never said anything mean, she just stopped saying hi. He decided to stop inviting me to social events with my other friends, but then posted about it all over social media. I since figured that he stopped inviting me because I don't enjoy binge drinking until I black out. She was the worst maid of honor ever. I brought my bachelorette party to her, as she was going to school in Miami. I'm from the northeast coast, and she still didn't bother showing up to any of the activities. Not even a dinner or to stop by the hotel for a simple hello. She started writing the wedding speech while I was getting my dress on. She ended up getting shit-faced, and her speech was a rambling mess that people around me still joke about. She showed up to the wedding suite as my new husband and I were getting ready for bed. Was even more drunk by then. Broke a glass that cut my foot. Haven't spoken to her since. She never apologized. Pretty sure she doesn't think she did anything wrong at all. Friend since second grade. We just kind of grew apart. Different maturity levels, tastes, bad habits. Both joined the military a few years after high school to do something different, 80s. Tried to maintain contact, but distance was the killer. Eventually, we both found other friends. Never wrote him off, but the friendship seemed dead. But then, when I retired from the military, we ended up 30 miles apart. First time we got back together after 10 plus years, it was the same as when we were kids. Played video games, went to the range, and managed to get yelled at. Probably going to be buried, but oh well. I've been friends with my best friend since I was in third grade. What brought us together was our shared interest in video games and the fact that we're practically neighbors. While we're still friends, we don't have the same camaraderie that we shared years ago. Since high school, we went sort of on our own separate ways. He hangs out with other people and he spends more time with his girlfriend than with me. Looking back, that was one of the worst feelings I've ever experienced. Seeing the distance grow between you and your best friend is utterly terrible, especially knowing that no matter how hard you try, your relationship with him won't ever be the same. But that's part of life, and it's one of the few things I've managed to come to terms with. I guess we never stopped being friends, but my best friend died in July. I used to talk to him every day on the phone. We lived in different states, and we would talk about BS or real heavy stuff depending on what was going on in our lives. I met him my first week in college. We remained close friends when he left and after I graduated. He went to India, was getting his life on track, and then he hit a tree right after he got back. I miss him dearly, and I wish more than anything that I could just talk to him. Friends are the best, don't take them for granted. She disappeared. My friend had been through some pretty heavy shit, eventually fell back into a drug addiction, got pregnant from her dealer, wanted an abortion but decided in the end to keep the kid and quit drugs. Then, about a week before the child would have been born, she disappeared. No one knew why, or what happened. One day, she was just completely gone. Never came back online, her phone was dead, her email didn't work anymore. For years, I thought she might have killed herself. Just last year, 6 years later, I found her during one of my many Google searches for her, on LinkedIn. She seemed to be doing okay now. Never contacted her, she must have had her reasons. She decided I enabled her cheating, drinking and sex addiction, even though I ended our friendship because of her cheating, drinking and sex addiction, which had spiraled out of control in the years we spent apart at different schools. She wrote me a lengthy letter, claiming her therapist told her to do so, that detailed the ways I owed her and how I was at fault for her cheating on her husband at my sister's birthday party. We were best friends for a while until we found ourselves both single at the same time, decided to hook up with each other for about a month, and then went back to being friends with only some minor awkwardness tension. We survived the friends with benefits, but what we didn't survive was that about a month later I realized I was a dude and came out as transgender, and he almost immediately pushed me out of his life, and we went from talking every day to not at all. I don't think he could wrap his head around the implications of us hooking up, though in reality there are none. I was best friends with a guy since we were 11. At 18 we went to different universities expecting to see each other again during the break over Christmas, so we didn't talk to each other when we got to university. This was pre-Facebook. After 6 weeks at university he suddenly died. He'd had a problem when he was 15 with fluid buildup in his lungs. He'd had surgery to fix the problem. My memory of exactly what the problem was are hazy, since it was over 20 years ago now, but it reoccurred. The story I was told was he went to hospital since he wasn't feeling well, but it was too late and he died there. I now take my kids to visit his grave. My friend and his wife divorced. A couple years before that, they asked me to be the godfather to their son. I agreed. After they separated, he got mad at me for not cutting her off and removing her from social media. I tried to explain to him that I keep in contact with her for the purpose of checking in on my godson to see how he's doing or needs anything for school. He told me I was a sellout and hung up on me. Haven't heard from him since that day. It's been 2 years. I tried to get in touch with him a couple of times, but he never returned my calls. She got both of us into a T-bone car crash because she wasn't paying attention and ran a red light. After passers-by got us out of the wreck, she told me to leave and hide somewhere before the police got there so she wouldn't be responsible for an extra person on her insurance. I had to reevaluate how much she really cared about her, and I haven't spoken to her in over a year now. Oh boy, he was a douche. This was in middle school. Basically, he talked about me behind my back about everything I did. Also, the worst part is he made a lie that I told everyone that he had sex with his girlfriend, which was false. To make matters worse, turns out the girl he claimed was his girlfriend really wasn't. He lied that they had constant sex and always made out, and it was a huge lie that even made the girl KO him, which was pretty funny to see. TLDR, friend lied about girlfriend and fucking her, and she knocked him out. Unbelievable racist, only cares about his car, has probably the biggest ego of anyone I've ever met. I think I only hung around with him when I was young because we both were our only friends. I see why no one liked him now. I grew up, he got more childish as he got older. I was a pretty awkward kid growing up, but had a friend who was really awesome to be around when we were hanging out, but was a complete dickhead when we were with a group of people. I eventually moved on. I never understood why people feel the need to do that. He stole my Batman action figure and then lied to my face about it. It was the one with the awesome grappling utility belt. This was in 1st grade, but I'll never forgive him for the rest of my life. He was the first in a long line of best friends to burn me. First friend, too much drama. She would always talk gossip about people behind their back, and she always was more interested in going to the bars to flirt, get free drinks from men. She's married. We were friends since kindergarten, 29 years old now. People grow up and grow apart, sadly. Second friend, she recently is now involved in a heavy relationship and decided to ditch all her friends. After months of trying to hang out with her with no response, she posted some shady FB post about how she doesn't need to explain to people why she doesn't want to be friends. I believe the exact quote was, "Even if we've been friends 1 year or 20 years, I don't need to give you an explanation on why I don't want to be friends with you anymore." Way to be mature. I got sick. Suddenly I couldn't go out. I had to be meticulous about watching what I ate and how much fluid I drank. Can't go out for lunch or coffee. I had trouble walking. If it's cold out, I don't go outside. I have a hard time keeping my house clean enough to have guests over. Also, if she ever did come over, it made her uncomfortable when I did my dialysis, which I do every 3 hours. I'm on the verge of breaking up with a best friend because she blames her depression for everything. She is drowning in student loans, she can't get up in time to go to work, she's never on time for anything we do, she has social anxiety in almost every situation, and she started dating the biggest asshole I've ever met. Anytime we ask her about any of this, or question her motives for anything in any way, she talks about how her life has been much harder than ours and it's not her fault that any of these things happen. No matter how many times we reach out, she acts like she wants nothing to do with us. His wife told him that my fiancé told her that he wasn't going to be in my wedding party. And so he basically up and stopped talking to me. I confronted him and asked if something was wrong. He said if I didn't value him enough to have him in my wedding, then we basically aren't friends. I actually had really big plans for him to be in my wedding. He needed money and the B2B business he was working at was giving a $5,000 headhunting fee. Calls me up and offers me a job in another state. I drop everything and move out there cause he was my best friend since we were in the 7th grade, so I trusted him to look out for my best interests. After a few weeks it became apparent that I was nowhere near qualified, but I busted my ass and made it work. Found out after a couple of months he just wanted me to sleep with his wife so he could divorce her without guilt. 6 months later the business folds when the internet bubble pops and I am moving my family back to live with my in-laws while I start over from scratch. That was about 15 years ago. We haven't spoken since. She blamed me for breaking her and her boyfriend up. She would constantly go out and openly flirt with guys. I would be a good friend and remind her of her boyfriends. One night I texted her BF to tell her to come home, as she didn't listen to me. He asked where she was. She said at home. He broke up with her. Apparently she always went out without him and hit on guys, which he hated. That was the last straw, and she blamed me. She was a selfish friend anyways. Good riddance. The invention of three-way calling. I had a friend who called my best friend on a three-way call when it just started becoming popular. The best friend didn't realize it was a three-way call and proceeded to show how two-faced someone can actually be. The years of teenage drama. I just failed completely at having friends. Making them is easy, trying to keep them is easy, but if I don't actively try to not push people away, I push people away. I think I'm not doing it purposefully, that it's something I do subconsciously, but I am not sure. I have a friend right now who simply don't let me push him away, and at the same time he doesn't force himself on me too much. I don't think he knows how happy I am for that. But for everyone else, I have simply pushed them away. Lies, lies, lies. Everything he said was a lie. I tolerated it, but it got worse and worse. Calling him out on a lie was the end of the world for him. He was disrespectful to everyone we came in contact with, self-centered and rude to anyone and everyone. I couldn't stand how he treated those around him and finally got sick of it. She actively cut me out of her life after 10 years of me thinking we were friends. Apparently it was about 2 years of friendship and 8 years of her hating me without saying anything, according to her. I found out later on, after a suicide attempt or 3 on her part, that she is mentally ill and her family knew for a long time, and though I knew too. I had no idea. She still won't forgive me for things I apparently did, but we are on speaking terms again. So I consider that a success. That's all we're ever going to have now, so at least being able to say hi to her when she walks her dogs is something, even if it's not friendship. To be fair, the phone incident seems almost minor compared to the other things you listed about her. Hopefully it was a wake-up call, no pun intended, for her as well. I'm not saying violence is okay, but not all destructive behavior is physical. Something similar happened to me. I was having my second miscarriage and I called my friend to tell her and cry on her shoulder. She said, "I guess this is not really a good time to tell you I'm pregnant then." It didn't help that she smoked and drank her way through the pregnancy. I did eventually go back to speaking to her, but it took a long time. As someone who is on the flip side of this coin, over time I realized losing my best friend hurt worse than losing the girl. That was 25 years ago, and from time to time I still check his Facebook page to see how he is doing. A few years back, I found out he and his wife had lost a child. It hurt I could not call him. He still hates me to this day. It wasn't worth it. For what it is worth, I'm sorry you went through that, and I'm sorry you lost your best friend. Had something like this happen to me too. I bent over backwards for my best friend and never imagined she could betray me so bad. In the end she did me a favor because I realized I had been in love with a complete asshole. I was in love with him and it's never fun to be cheated on, but my friend being complicit hurt so much more. Double whammy. I recently found out he beat the shit out of her too. So glad I got both of those terrible people out of my life. Yeah, everyone but me had realized he was mentally abusive and he really was all around horrible. I'm still more hurt that she did it than him. I mean, I had literally cried and cried for my parents to temporarily adopt her when her mom went to rehab so she didn't end up on the streets. My parents disliked her and didn't even want to. I did everything for her. No idea how she could do it. Sounds like my girlfriend's best friend. She was texting me a couple days ago about how he changes when he's in a group and lies to make himself seem better. He even said some stuff that she did, but he said he was the one who did it. He just treats her like shit, but then gets jealous or acts depressed when she goes and does shop with me, or can't hang out with him. He doesn't have a secret thing for her. He's gay, so that's not a plausible explanation. He's just a shitty hypocritical friend, but my girlfriend is too nice to see it. On behalf of non-white people, thank you for setting an example and standing against these kind of people. On Reddit, racism is so accepted here it's crazy, but when people like you choose to be on the right side, it just shows a lot of support for us. That little goes a long ways. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.